The US could soon begin striking ISIS targets from Turkey for the first time. Half a dozen American fighter jets are standing by at Incirlik Air Base, not far from the Syrian border. Let's turn now to our senior international correspondent, Pleitgen. He's in the Syrian capital, Damascus. Fred, you spoke to the Syrian Information Minister a short time ago. What did he have to say about the US airstrikes?
Yeah, certainly. That is something that's very much on the minds of Syrian officials, Lynda. One of the interesting things that the Syrian Information Minister told me is he said, look, anybody who combats ISIS with any sort of means is someone that we support. But on the other hand, he also criticized the United States, saying one of the things the U.S. should do, he believes, is coordinate all of this with the Syrian government, which is, of course, something that both the U.S. and the Syrians have said is not happening at this point in time. Of course, the reason for that is that the U.S. continues to insist that Bashar al-Assad must step down before there can be any sort of cooperation in the fight against ISIS. Now, there was some pretty heavy criticism also that the Syrian Information Minister levied towards Turkey. Of course, Turkey has said that it's going to expand its airstrikes against ISIS, but also has started to expand its airstrikes against the PKK, the Kurdish force inside Turkey. And one of the things that the information minister said is that he feels that the Turkish president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, is waging a war against the Kurds rather than waging a war against ISIS. So certainly very critical of that decision indeed. However, it is quite surprising how positive a Syrian senior government official was to these American airstrikes that presumably will start very, very soon inside of Syria, much quicker, of course, than before launching there from Incirlik, Lynda.
And Fred, we know that the Iranian foreign minister will be arriving there any moment. Yeah. We know, of course, that Iran is a great ally of Bashar al-Assad. Can you tell us what sort of peace plan they're pushing for?
Well, the Iranians for a very long time have been pushing towards a political solution. But one of the big problems that's been going on is, of course, that there really isn't very much common ground between the two main factions that are involved here in Syria. On the one hand, you have an alliance of the Gulf states, the U.S., of course, as well as some others as well. And on the other side, you have the Syrian government, Hezbollah, as well as the Iranians. And they simply can't find any common ground when it comes to fighting ISIS. So that certainly is something that is still very much a problem. The other thing also is that the Iranians have been pushing for negotiations, but many of the opposition groups that are involved here in the fight against the Syrian regimes don't want any sort of settlement that's negotiated by the Iranians. So this is certainly something that's going to make it very difficult. However, it is going to be very interesting to see what the Iranian foreign minister will have to say. He did meet with President Bashar al-Assad already today here in Damascus. So far, it's not exactly clear what the two were talking about in that meeting.
And Fred, we have seen some deadly violence in and around Damascus today. Just tell us what happened.
Well, certainly. I mean, it was the case that in the past couple of days, it's been actually fairly quiet here in the Syrian capital. However, earlier this morning, we were woken by the thuds of what seemed to be rocket fire impacting close to where we were. It seems as though several government-controlled areas were hit with rockets early this morning, and that led to some airstrikes on the part of the Syrian government, those hitting mostly rebel areas such as Douma as well as the Ghouta area, which is sort of on the eastern fringe of Damascus. Apparently, from what we're hearing, there was at least 37 people who were killed in those airstrikes, although also many people wounded as well. And the information that we're getting from the ground is that there could possibly be an even higher death toll simply because many of those people who were wounded are in very critical condition, Lynda.
Okay, thank you for staying across all of that for us. Pleitgen in Damascus, thanks very much.